Hi everyone, it's Nicole Spohr for Lawnfawn, and today I'm sharing a flippin' awesome Christmas card with you featuring lots of different stamps and dies from Lawnfawn to create this fun scene interactive card. The Flippin' Awesome is absolutely so easy to put together, and you can create just fantastic interactive designs with any kind of theme. This one is going to feature some elves getting ready for Christmas, Santa and Mrs. Claus, and then finally Santa in his sleigh with reindeer. That's going to be the last panel that extends to the longest piece. For the background on all of my Flippin' Awesome scenes, I'm going to use the large square that comes in the Flippin' Awesome set. I've also die cut some lawnfawn mermaid cardstock using the landscape snowfall die. And I just used a scrap really to die cut this. And then I'm using the square die from Flippin' Awesome to die cut the square so that it fits perfectly with the Flippin' Awesome set. To remove those little pieces really easily, I'm using a little tool to just roll over that and remove all those little circles from the snowfall. In addition to these squares, because I want to have a white backer to these and they don't actually adhere to a panel this size, I will be die cutting additional squares from white cardstock. You could also trim them if you wanted to. I wanted to make sure they were exactly the same size as the panel I die cut. So I die cut a white square and then I die cut these die cut squares. And we're going to layer the snowfall ones right on top. I've also taken some smooth white cardstock and I'm using some stitched simple wavy borders, or this simple wavy border, to die cut some snowy borders that I can put along the bottom edge of each background. I'm going to use a little double-sided tape and we're going to just pop our little squares on here. I can get about 2 per die cut border, and then we're just going to trim these up. And this just adds to the overall scene. We're basically creating 4 mini scenes on one card. And you guys know I love my scenes, so this is so much fun. Or snow much fun, however you want to call it. We'll go ahead and do that for the remaining 2 squares. I will also need to be creating a rectangle for the extended scene, and we'll get to that here in just a little bit. That's that last panel that has the reindeer. It's the one that slides out from behind everything. Next, I'm going to use the lawnfawn glue tube to glue my panel right to that white square that I was just talking about. This is going to make each of those little panels for the Flippin' Awesome set. And I'll repeat this all 4 times. And then we're going to assemble the Flippin' Awesome interactive element. This is a card where I designed basically the background first. We'll get to the very background, the card base, later. But this is the background of our scene. And I'm creating all of this first, and then we are going to go and grab all of the images we want to use to build our kind of progressive scene. And we will stamp all those. And some of them are going to be stamped more than once. There's a couple of images that I'll stamp twice, and I'll talk about that when we get there. Okay, so now we have assembled and placed all of our panels on our Flippin' Awesome die. I'm going to wrap those 2 little tabs there. That's the only place we're going to have adhesive. And I want to use something strong because nothing else is actually attached to the background panel. That's what makes this move. The only adhesive for this interactive element is on these 2 tabs. We're going to wrap those to the back then after we remove the backing paper. And then I have die cut a white rectangle using the Flippin Awesome add-on, and we're going to attach our panel to this. And this just gives it a nice base, nice decorative base. You don't have to use this. You can put your Flippin Awesome element right on your card if you want to, but I chose to use this because it's going to really help differentiate this element from our custom striped background we're going to create. So there you can kind of see how the element's going to work. Let's finish building our background and stamping sentiments before we stamp and color everything in. So I thought it would be fun on the snowy border along the bottom edge of each panel to kind of build on my sentiment. I'm going to use the Ho Ho Holidays stamp set with black licorice lawnfawn ink, and we're going to stamp May Your Holidays on the first panel. On the second panel, Be Filled with Magic. So that's the next one we're adding. And I'm kind of just centering them in the center of each of those little snowy borders along the bottom edge. Almost kind of like a comic strip feeling, I think, with these Flippin kind of elements, at least with how I'm adding the greetings here. And then we're going to move to the next one, and I actually pieced together a couple of sentiments for this, and that's because I wanted it to read, May your holidays be filled with magic, be jolly and shine bright. I stamped Be Jolly on the final one. That's where I'm going to piece them together. Sorry about that. And that's where I'm going to use and from one of the phrases, and that's going to be from the And a Very Jolly New Year. That's where I'm getting the word and. If I had cut apart my sentiment, it would have been a little easier to work with. I tend to not like to cut mine apart. That's just me. I know a lot of people don't mind that at all, so definitely do that if you feel like it. So I'm just going to mask it off with Post-it tape. I kept trying to stamp and first, and I finally decided to stamp Shine Bright and then go back and add and. I've also done this part if I had to. If I messed up, I could remove this panel with some like undo adhesive remover and restamp or re-die cut and stamp this snowy border if I wanted to. It would be much easier to stamp these borders before you assemble the Flippin' Awesome. I decided after I assembled it that I wanted to add greetings to each panel. So just a little tip there. I mean, if you know what you're going to do ahead of time where you're going to add your sentiment, I would suggest doing that before you assemble, but you definitely can still do it. And I left it in here because I thought it was important to show that it is possible, but you might have to make, some adjustments and things in case there's an error. Now, to make the sentiment flow nice, I'm just going to take a black pen and add some little dots and an exclamation point to each panel. So after May Your Holidays, we'll have a little ... Be filled with magic ... Be jolly ... And then we're going to have a little ... in Shine Bright exclamation point. That kind of lets the recipient know that the sentiment is going to continue with each panel. Now this long stitched rectangle comes with the Flippin' Awesome add-on. It's made to fit with that scallop add-on that we've added. I did die cut the rectangle from another snowfall background panel, just like we did for each of the squares, but this time I don't need to back it with white cardstock because it's going to be adhered directly to the back of our Flippin' Awesome component. So that landscape snowfall was die cut from Mermaid cardstock. We're just going to add a little wavy snowy border along the bottom edge. Then we're going to glue this down in place, and that creates an extended seam. And it really works nicely with this because then you get the whole Santa and his sleigh with some reindeer at the very end. We're just going to finish with our little sentiment. Now that we have our background completely built, it's time for the fun part where we're going to stamp all of the images we're going to use for building our Flippin' Awesome card. This is a lot of images. I did not quite get all of them stamped on one panel. If I'd used a larger Misty and a larger piece of paper, I probably could have, but we'll just stamp the remaining reindeer and Santa and things on another piece of paper. Plus, I think I even went in and added a few additional elements like some extra packages, another teddy bear, things like that for my final panel. That final panel is pretty long, and so I felt like it needed quite a bit of images to fill it in and just really make it feel complete. Each individual panel in the Flippin' Awesome die set here really is its own unique scene. So for our first scene, and I'm going to go scene or kind of panel by panel, I guess I'll call it. I did stamp everything, and I had laid out my stamps on the panels prior so I had an idea, but we're going to color them panel by panel, die cut and adhere them. We have our first panel, which is going to be our girl elf. She's holding the nice list, and she's going to have a couple of toys around her and a roll of ribbon, kind of like the elves are getting ready for Christmas with gift wrapping. I've also used a few non-traditional colors. I went really bright modern with my colors today, so I incorporated a lot of limey greens, turquoise or aqua colors, and pink, in addition to red and green. I really like that kind of look, and I thought it worked really nice for these images. I'm using images from the Holiday Helpers stamp set, which has been out for a little while. I love how we can just mix and match from all of our Lawn Fawn sets to create these beautiful scene cards. So we've got our nice list, our girl elf, the drum set, the train, and then we're going to have the roll of ribbon. All of these images are from the Holiday Helpers stamp set. And I have listed the colors of Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers I'm using across the bottom of the screen. I am doing no line coloring today using a no line coloring ink. I stamped everything on Bristol Smooth Cardstock and then coloring it in. I really think this is a fun look. I've die cut my images, and we're going to go ahead and assemble them to the panel. One thing I would highly recommend is all your images really can't hang off the edge, because remember that especially that left side is going to flip underneath. It's going to be pulled underneath to make that Flippin' Awesome work. So I've adhered those. I've used some craft tweezers to kind of help pinch everything and hold it down in place, because the Flippin' Awesome is a little bit dimensional, and I just want everything to be stuck down really good. I don't want it going anywhere when those panels flip underneath. And we're going to work on the components for our second panel, which is now our boy elf, and he's got the toy sack. He's got wrapped packages around him. So it's like they're prepping for Christmas at the North Pole in the first panel. And then they're still prepping, but now they're filling Santa's toy sack. He's got presents wrapped. He's holding a teddy bear in his hand. So these are the images we're using for the second panel. The images for this one, the elf, the elf and the bear only come from the Holiday Helpers. The packages and the toy sack come from this year's Ho Ho Holidays stamp set. And then the one other package that's a little bit different design is from the Yeti or Not stamp set. And that's really the only image from this stamp set that I've used, but I wanted just another package, kind of the same size and style, but not exactly the same. You could always just repeat one of these if you wanted to. And I'm going to add a couple of those elements later, because you might be wondering where that additional package and toy sack are. This is one of those panels where I felt like it was a little bit light. It did not have as many things to fill in that area as I would like to. And that's where I'm going to come back and add the toy sack and another present, and that really fills it in perfectly here in a little bit. And that will be as we get more towards the end of assembling our card. We can always go back and add a few additional great little embellishments. Let's go ahead and color in our images for the third panel. So we've got our elves that have prepped, we've got our elves that are filling Santa's toy sack, and now we have Santa and Mrs. Claus, and he's fueling up for the big night with some milk and cookies. We're also going to have a little speech bubble here that says ho ho ho. I loved that little ho 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 sentiment from the Ho Ho Holidays stamp set. So we're going to combine that with a thought bubble from the Say What Christmas Critters stamp set. I just needed a thought bubble that would fit the size of the panel. It's going to hang off the top edge, and we're just going to snip that off so that it's nice and flat. But I again started with Santa and Mrs. Claus. They are a little bit bigger images and they do fill in more space on the panel, but I really felt like we needed embellishments. And so we're going to add, I originally stamped the plate of cookies and the glass of milk, but I didn't color them right away. And I do come back and color those, die cut those, and add those later. But I die cut Santa and Mrs. Claus. We're going to glue those down in place. I think they're so cute. And Santa is going to be stamped twice and colored twice, although on the second image, I don't color the whole image because he's going to be tucked in his sleigh and there was no sense in coloring the whole thing. Now here is that thought bubble from the Say What Christmas Critters stamp set. We're going to stamp this with black licorice ink. And this is just a scrap of smooth white cardstock. Then we're going to take some lobster ink and stamp that Ho 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 from the Ho Ho Holidays stamp set with lobster ink right there along the bottom edge of the thought bubble. Die cut this with the coordinating Say What Christmas Critters die, and then pop this onto that third panel of the Flippin' Awesome component. This is a really fantastic size thought bubble. I think it will work for lots of different types of cards. Even if you wanted to add a thought bubble to each panel of the Flippin' Awesome, I think that would be fun too. And maybe another great way to add a sentiment. We are ready to start working on our final panel. Now this has the most images for sure. This has Santa, Santa's sleigh, the bag, the toy bag, a reindeer, and then the reins and like the collars that the reindeer wear and some presents. Those images are all from Ho Ho Holidays. The teddy bear is from the Holiday Helpers. And then our last reindeer, because I wanted two different reindeer options, that is from the Toboggan Together stamp set. He's facing the right direction, so he was a perfect reindeer for this. We are going to stamp the reins for the reindeer and the collars. That's going to be stamped twice. Other repetition images for this panel: Santa, the bag of toys, the teddy bear, and the presents. We've already stamped all of those before. With a card like this where there's so many different panels, always just kind of keep in mind that you want each panel to tell its own story and not to be too light, if that makes sense, with what is included on there. And I think by adding in, because I didn't originally have those images, but by adding in those last few things, it really just filled out the design perfectly. So you can kind of see how it's coming together and how much fun that extended scene is. Now, if you don't want to add an extended scene, that last little panel piece is a great place to hide a gift card. So if you were wanting to give a gift card, you could always maybe change up what that final scene is and add in a gift card instead, and it's a fantastic presentation for that. So here is where I'm deciding that I'm going to need a few more things, and I still have my plate of cookies and I have that glass of milk, so we're going to color those in and die cut those really quick. And remember, those are going to be added to the third panel with Santa and Mrs. Claus and the thought bubble. And again, that fills it out really nice. And then we've got our extra toy sack and present that we're going to add to this panel. And you can see that I did not finish coloring in the bottom half of Santa because you're not ever going to know that he's not all the way colored in because he's going to be tucked into the sleigh. Those tweezers, craft tweezers, come in so handy to kind of pinch everything down and hold it down in place. We're just going to pull that out and go ahead and finish assembling our final panel. So we've got Santa, the sack, and the sleigh. And then I do end up adding a teddy bear in there too. It was just one of those things where I kind of kept adding to it until I felt like it was as full as it needed to be. And then there's our couple of reindeer, which I think turned out so cute. I really love this. I gave one a red nose, so one is Rudolph, and then one's got the traditional dark nose. Something I forgot to mention as I was coloring in images, faces. So anything that has a face, elves, teddy bear, Santa, Mrs. Claus, the reindeer, I did take a fine tip black pen and draw that detail back in when I was done coloring with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. This is important because I think faces really make or break an image. The girl elf and Mrs. Claus got some eyelashes as well. And then that nice list that the first panel has, it has the words nice list and then some squiggle lines on it. I went ahead and drew those back in with a fine tip black pen too, so that it was really legible and easy to see. Then we're going to add our collars for the reindeer. Now, I do want to mention the one that comes straight from the sleigh. That's going to have to be cut apart. I didn't start it cut apart, but I will cut that one apart. So I'm going to attach the reindeer first, and then I'm going to attach the collar, but I'm not going to put glue across the entire thing. And I'll show you, I probably could have and then trimmed it apart, but I found it easier to just glue the part that goes on that rectangle panel. Then I'm just going to snip that with my scissors, going to make sure it's right where it's kind of shifted, I think, with my glue. We're going to snip that, and then I'm going to put glue on the back of this and line it up. And I'm making sure that's attached well because the end of that is going to tuck right up underneath and you want to make sure that it stays put. So I'm just positioning the rest of those reins on that final panel with Santa. So it has a pretty seamless look even though it's cut apart. And then we'll finish our final one. We're going to trim that one down and tuck it underneath our reindeer just a little bit. So it gives it the illusion that it's back behind. So this panel looks pretty good, but this is an example of maybe it's a little light. It needs a pop of color. We got lots of red and brown here. So I stamped another teddy bear and some more packages. And the addition of two colorful packages and a little teddy bear sticking out of the sleigh really ties everything together nicely. And again, the teddy bear doesn't have to be colored all the way, just like Santa didn't, because you will never know he's going to be tucked into that sleigh. We are almost done with the majority of the work for this card. We have a little background to build, which you could always do a pattern paper and make a little less work. I wanted my background to really complement the design of my card in color. And so I trimmed a bunch of 1/4-inch strips of lawnfawn cardstock. I'm using Ballet Slippers, Guava, Chili Pepper, Cilantro, Noble Fir, Mermaid, and Peacock. Those are all colors that you see used throughout my card design with pinks and kind of aquas and greens. So I'm going to do a diagonal pattern all across my card front. This is a card base. I've already folded it in half. And I'm putting some double-sided lawnfawn adhesive on my strips, peeling it off, and just building a pattern that goes the light pink, the guava pink, red, lime green, green, aqua, and then kind of teal. And I'm going to repeat that. I think the only strip I needed 3 of was the light pink, but otherwise I made sure that I left a long end. I wanted to cover the whole card panel, but I'm leaving a long end off one side because when I trim those off, I can often use a lot of those scraps to fill in other places, which is what I ended up doing. So any of those shorter strips kind of in the corners, that's going to be just little leftover scrap pieces. I love building my own stripe backgrounds that perfectly match. This is a super easy way. All of the strips are the same width on this card, but you could very easily do different widths if you wanted to and mix it up, do a different kind of pattern. Or maybe you only want to do some stripes in the center of the card going up and down. There's lots and lots of different ways that you can approach building your own striped background. So here you can see I trimmed all those ends off. I'm going to keep all of those and we're going to fill in some little areas with those here in a minute. In the widest part of the diagonal, we're going to need plenty of long strips, but after that, all those little pieces are going to fill in. So what I did was I trimmed 2 of each of the strips, or 2 each in each color, except for pink, which I did light pink, Ballet Slippers pink, which I did 3. And that's going to completely fill, and these were just scraps of cardstock in my file. I don't think I actually used a full sheet of cardstock. I just grabbed my lawnfawn cardstock and trimmed little strips from all of that. Next, we are going to take the Just Stitching double rectangles, the largest rectangles in this. We're going to open our card up and we are going to create just a little decorative edge. It's one final little thing that just gives a beautiful finished detail to our background design. So we're going to center this on our card front. Remember to open it up because we did put this on the card base. I'm going to tape it down temporarily with a little post-it tape. You could use washi tape or another low-tack type of tape. And run that through your die cutting machine and it's going to add a beautiful stitched edge all the way around. Look how nice that looks. I really love this technique and I think it adds such a great effect to a very simple background. So with this beautiful modern background like this, we are now going to adhere our Flippin' Awesome panel right to the center of our background. The final thing we have left to do is to let the recipient know that this is an interactive card. They might already guess that, but let's reinforce that pull tab by die cutting the Flippin' Awesome add-on tab from Mermaid Cardstock, stamping it with a Pull Here sentiment from the Push Here stamp set. I'm going to use the black licorice ink. And then we're going to glue that right to the little tab on Flippin' Awesome. And in Flippin' Awesome and the Flippin' Awesome add-on, there are different options for the pull tab. So if you want to add ribbon to one, there's an option for that. There's some with little die cut arrows, or you can use this one and customize it with a stamped sentiment. We'll adhere this then to our card base, and I will show you the Flippin' Awesome interactive element in action. I want to use a nice strong adhesive to adhere this. And look how beautiful those cardstock strips match the colors we used for our card. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for this Flippin' Awesome holiday card featuring lawnfawn stamps, dies, cardstock, and ink. Please be sure to visit the Lawnfawn blog for more information on this project. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. Happy holidays, and we'll catch you next time.